Tonight with breaking news, our big story, the record-long government shutdown is over, at least for the time being.
President Trump announcing a short-term deal today. Here's what it involves. The government will reopen for 3 weeks. There is no money in the agreement to build a border wall. However, negotiations over a long-term deal continue, and the president says the fight over the wall isn't over.
Meantime, the news, a big relief for the 800,000 federal workers who are missing a second paycheck. Many of them struggling to either pay their mortgage or even afford groceries. We have more on the workers and how they're feeling here in Metro Detroit, starting tonight with team coverage with Kenneth Moten live in Washington, D.C. Kenneth.
Moments ago, the Senate passed a short-term spending bill to reopen the government. The measure now moves over to the House. Under intense political pressure, President Trump is making a major concession, agreeing to fund the government without border wall money.
Day 35 of the partial government shutdown, an end to the stalemate between the Democrats and President Trump.
We have reached a deal to end the shutdown and reopen the federal government.
The tentative deal, 3 weeks of funding. The president backing down from his $5.7 billion demand for a southern border wall, while a bipartisan group of lawmakers negotiates a broader border security agreement.
They will put together a homeland security package for me to shortly sign into law.
It's sad, though, that it's taken this long to come to an obvious conclusion.
Democratic leaders are still firmly against wall funding, but promising to operate in good faith.
Hopefully, it means a lesson learned. Shutting down the government over a policy difference is self-defeating.
800,000 federal workers missing paychecks, lining up at food banks, struggling to pay the bills. This was the scene today at several major airports, a ground stop at LaGuardia Airport in New York, flight delays in Philadelphia, D.C., and Florida due to absent air traffic controllers. At the IRS, more than half of the 26,000 workers recalled for the tax season didn't show up to work. This Coast Guard wife inside a food pantry in Connecticut, emotional as she watched the president's announcement.
I want to thank all of the incredible federal workers and their amazing families who have shown such extraordinary devotion in the face of this recent hardship.
The vote in the House to reopen the government could happen later this evening, and then it's on to the president. Again, he is expected to sign that short-term measure. We can also report that if the president doesn't get wall funding in 3 weeks, he has threatened to shut down the government again or use his executive power to pay for the wall. Reporting live here in Washington, Kenneth Moten, ABC News. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Kenneth.
And our big story coverage continues with 7 Action News reporter Jennifer Ann Wilson. Jen, this is a huge relief for a lot of federal workers right here in our area.
Yeah, it sure is. I spoke to a woman named Stephanie Perkins. Today, she says, is usually payday, and although she doesn't have a paycheck in her hand, she finally has the promise of one. After 35 days of not getting paid, Stephanie Perkins has been glued to the TV.
We have reached a deal to end the shutdown and reopen the federal government.
Was it a surprise to hear that a deal?
It was. That was the last thing I expected him, the president, to come out and say was that we've reached a deal and we're going to reopen the government. You know, that was the reaction. Oh, really? Oh, thank God, though. I really am happy.
But there is still some concern because this deal is only temporary.
It's only going to last for 3 weeks. So there's always going to be that sword hanging over our head, wondering, are we going to be back out in the street in 3 weeks? But for now, I think I can speak for a lot of us and say we'll take what we can get.
And she has an important message she wants to share.
I will never forget their kindness. I think it was a wonderful, wonderful thing. That I'm going to get a little emotional here, that these ordinary Americans, working or otherwise, went to all the trouble, who took the time to try to reach out and help us the best way they could. I will never forget it, and I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart.
At this point, Stephanie's not exactly sure where that first paycheck will come, but she's excited to get back to work and tackle that piling stack of papers that is just continuing to pile up. And she really did speak for quite a while about how much it has meant to her that the community has reached out to her, her coworkers, and others who've been off work for the past 35 days. Reporting live in Commerce, I'm Jennifer Ann Wilson, 7 Action News.
Yeah, definitely good news for the hundreds of thousands of federal workers out of a job. Well, for a closer look at the reopened deal and what needs to be decided over the next 3 weeks, you can go to our website, WXYZ.com.